and you're live.
Good evening, members of the Chiefs Advisory Committee, and welcome back to our second meeting. I appreciate you joining us again on a virtual platform as we still navigate all of the recommendations for health and public safety related to the pandemic. Welcome back again. Before we get too far into our agenda, we have a special guest. I'd like to give the floor and some time to our City Manager, Dana Mcdaniel.
Well, thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. Wow, I get to go up front. That's pretty nice of him. I appreciate that. I'm dropping in on your meeting, not to take up your time, and you got important things to do, but I just wanted to personally jump on and say thank you all so much for your willingness to serve in this capacity for our community and to help the Chief and his team as they move forward on a lot of important things here in serving the community. And I think what you all are going to bring to the conversation and advice and counsel to the Chief is just going to be invaluable. So I know I got to meet a lot of you, I believe, on the phone. Some of us know each other. I see some familiar faces, and for those that I can see in here, I think I got to speak to several of you on the phone. It was just a real honor and a pleasure to get to meet you. And I know that this is only your second meeting, so you're getting your momentum, you're getting your legs under you, and you'll pick up speed on things as you go forward. I know the Community Task Force likewise is doing the same, and we'll have our second meeting next week. And Esau is the liaisoning. I appreciate his support between the two, between the Chiefs Advisory Committee and the Community Task Force. So appreciate his role in doing that. And we too, I think, are going to be picking up momentum here over the next couple months as we move forward the Community Task Force. So any thoughts and ideas and the like that you may have for the Community Task Force are welcome as well. So I hope you'll monitor all that's going on with that group at the same time that you're involved with this. And please know you're welcome to participate and be involved in that as well. So again, I just really want to, on behalf of Dublin City Council and myself, thank you all so much for your participation in this very important role. And I'll listen in for just a couple minutes. I'm going to go listen to the Ambassador of Japan talk here in a few minutes. So I'm going to jump in on that. But if there's anything I can do to answer any questions you might have while I'm here, I'd be happy to do that. But thanks again for all that you're doing and all that you're going to do for our community. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Dana.
Dan, thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for the council and for your support of this community group and partnership with these members of our Chiefs Advisory Committee. Certainly appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for the city manager while we have him here with us in the meeting today? And certainly, as he always is open to questions from our community at any time. But while we have venue with him here, I just wanted to leave some space if anybody has any particular questions for the city manager.
Yes, I have a question. Hi, this is Mary. Have you guys established any goals or anything? Can you hear me? Okay. Have you established any goals or anything kind of like what you're kind of working towards?
Hi, it's Mary. It's good to see you. Actually, we have not gotten that far with the Community Task Force yet. That's their task. Now, council does have some things that they want them to look at. They want them to help, sort of put together a community engagement program. And so we've been having some discussion about that and how we might go about that. What are some of their thoughts and ideas? And I will tell you, we purposely left that very open-ended because the city did not want to be the one to say what that should be. That should really come from the community. So we're really doing a lot more listening and facilitating than we are talking, and trying to let the Community Task Force determine that sort of way ahead and what their thoughts are. The other thing, though, that we did ask them to do is similar to what you're doing here with the chief, is we're taking an inward look at the organization as a city of Dublin, as an organization, policies, procedures, things like that, to kind of look over our shoulder and give us some advice and counsel on that as well. Many of you may know Steve Francis. We've engaged Steve Francis. Steve's been working with us for, I'd say, the better part of 2 years plus with the executive staff of the city organization working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we are undertaking a complete assessment, internal assessment, and working on a strategic plan relative to that. And he's been really helpful with that. So we're making great progress towards that as well. So we've been really working on that for the better part of 2 years, but have really gotten into it much deeper here over the last few months. So I hope that answers your question. So the bottom line is it's pretty wide open, which I think is really exciting. And there's just a lot of ideas being floating around. And I'm really looking forward to next week's meeting, see how that goes.
Thank you. I do have one follow-up.
Mhm.
What do you see? How do you see this committee working with the task force committee? Do you see us
Sure.
going together at any point? Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the charges of the task force is that this committee, advisory committee, is structured in a way where you've already been programmed, if you will, into serving terms. The community task force has about a 1-year lifespan, with the idea being that their recommendations going back to council will determine the way ahead and what will be the future of that task force, or maybe it becomes a community advisory committee or something along those lines. We wanted to keep that open-ended relative to the broader, community aspect of what this could be. So the future of that's yet to be determined, and that'll be some of the recommendations, if you will, of this task force, is for them to kind of determine what the future ought to be for themselves and/or the task force and the community as a whole. So, and as to the connection between the two, I hope there's a strong connection. Esau has agreed to serve on both, so he can help be sort of that liaison between the two. But again, don't think for a second that you all aren't welcome to be part of that. So by all means, tune into those task force meetings and observe, listen in, participate. Everyone in the community is welcome to do that, much the same as we're live streaming here. That'll be live streamed as well. So as ideas and things come through this committee, and if you think they're appropriate for citywide discussion, if you will, consideration, by all means, those are the kinds of things we want to carry over to the task force, and vice versa. If they have some thoughts that this advisory committee could work on, then I would hope it would carry the other way as well.
Thank you.
Great question.
Dana, I actually have a follow-up question to that, if it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And thank you again for helping to put this together. I think it's going to be a very successful undertaking, and I think we're going to do good things. You mentioned Steve Francis and the fact that the city has been working with him on, I'm going to say, maybe workshops or on diversity and inclusion. And I had a question, and I'm glad that you're able to be here to potentially answer it, to find out if we as members of the Chiefs Advisory Committee and the task force members might be able to participate in one of the workshops that Mr. Francis puts on for the city of Dublin. And I say that because I think it's important that we might learn to speak the same language on these issues of diversity and inclusion. And so that's kind of my basic question. And I hope we are able to do that.
Yeah, Judge, I think that's spot on. And I think that's definitely, something we want to have happen. Because I kind of look at that as, while it's an internal organizational view that he's focused on the most right now. And I do anticipate Steve will do some work for us relative to the community task force as well. In fact, I've asked him to help me a little bit with the possibility of doing some facilitation work with them and/or the community as a whole. And, those kind of things can be sort of retrospective or inward looking to the organization as well. But as we do this comprehensive self-assessment process that we're in, it's like a strategic plan, if you will, on diversity, equity, and inclusion is actually what we're working on. I would see that sort of a format being absolutely critical to that inward look that we're doing as well. So I think that's a great idea and would certainly be welcome as part of the process. In fact, I would half expect Steve's got that up his sleeve, but he hadn't quite revealed that to me yet, but I would anticipate that's going to be part of it. So but thanks for your willingness to do that. I think it'd be powerful.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion, I guess, for the future? When we do have meetings, I know there's several of us, Stella wants to go to the school board meeting. I want to also hear it. If we could not have these meetings overlap with other important community meetings that are going on that many of us want to be a part of as well. Because, school board is important too, and city council is important, and we really want to be involved and hear from everybody. And it's hard to do that if they overlap like this. So I don't know who plans that, but just a suggestion for the future.
That's a great point. Is school board meeting tonight? Okay. Yeah. It used to be they were on the same council meeting night that we were, and then they seem to be going to Tuesdays now. They used to be on Mondays. And so we'll keep an eye on that and try not to have that conflict in the future. So,
Thank you. I think because it's such a abnormal year and there's so much going on and things change back and forth, but I appreciate that thoughtfulness.
sure.
Yeah, and I'll take full responsibility for not seeing all the way through the other meeting that was scheduled tonight at the school board, trying to reconcile the calendars for everybody who is here tonight. We have a couple members, Miss Ingram and Miss Yen weren't able to attend tonight, but this is where we had sort of in the response the most availability. But I completely understand and certainly want everybody to be as invested and involved as we possibly can in all of the arenas that are important in Dublin right now. So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, well, again, thank you all very much. If there's nothing else for me, I'll let you all get on with the great work of the advisory committee. I'll get out of your hair so you can get some good things done. And I appreciate the questions. And like I said, if you can't make a community task force meeting, because we kind of Google poll those folks and set the meeting up that way, so that we can get everyone, as many of them on as we can for any given meeting. But participate or watch the live stream of that, or feel free to give me a call or send me an email. They'll be selecting a chair and vice chair here over the next couple meetings as well. So obviously once you know who those people are, you can reach out to them as well, and you don't have to go through me. But me, I think a lot of us have spoken. I love to hear from you. So, don't be shy about giving me a call as well. Okay. So thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing. Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
So as we move into our agenda this evening, we did get a chance. I think Rebecca Myers was able to send out the agenda preceding the meeting. And the first thing I want to offer, while we have an agenda built, again, these discussions are really intended to be driven by what the members of the advisory committee bring to the table as well. So I don't want to, just because we provided an agenda, give any impression other than that's sort of a framework for us to discuss things if we get to them, but we certainly don't have to push through and reach everything on the agenda if there are important and critical conversations that are occurring that we just need to continue and follow through as we move through our discussions together. So I just wanted to offer that up front. That being said, before we get too far into it, I just wanted to make sure we did get a chance to send out, I believe, the minutes from our September 15th meeting, and I just wanted to check in with everybody to see if there were any revisions or additions based on what we sent from our previous meeting that you wanted to raise up as part of the conversation tonight. Okay, absent. And again, at any point, if you remember anything, certainly, let us know. We want to make this as, certainly as open as we possibly can. But the next item that I wanted to talk about, and again, revisiting our previous meeting, we had a couple of comments from the public as part of our last meeting. And so I just wanted to let the committee know what we were able to do with those comments. And so that we give some resolution and understanding of how we are addressing the public commentary received from the last meeting. meeting, and then any commentary we might have received preceding this meeting. So I'll ask Rebecca Myers to fill you in on that.
Sure. Thank you, Chief. Let's see. So the two comments that we received, we were going to be forwarding to the community task force because we feel like they are a little bit more in their realm outside of just policing, but to make that connection between our two groups. And then also to the school board as one of them pertain to the school. We don't have any public comments so far today, but if there's anything at the end of the meeting, I'll definitely share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think, as Mary, you mentioned last time how important it is for us to hear the totality of what is occurring as far as dialogue in our community. And for us, even if it isn't a policing issue on the surface, for us to be able to, in this venue and with this team, talk about those issues here as well. So as we examine what we got as commentary, we felt like it was more germane for it to be in that arena for those discussions. It doesn't mean we can't have that conversation here. We just wanted to make sure it also landed, with the right resource to be able to answer from either the school or from the task force as well. So that being said, the other part of this agenda item really was new commentary. And so it is not lost on me or on us or probably on anyone in this group that there have been some issues in the news about Dublin here over the last week. And so I wanted to provide some space and time for anybody who has a question or who has heard from members of the community who have reached out to you as members of the advisory committee for us to ask those questions now and to have that dialogue about any questions or concerns our community members might have currently.
I'll start since I like to talk, but I wanted to just kind of start off with, was Dublin Police Department informed of what was happening? And if you were, how did you handle it?
And just for the sake of clarity, informed about what in particular?
The planning meeting regarding the individuals who came down from Michigan and regarding the governor of Michigan.
Yes, thank you for asking what I think is probably a pretty obvious question people have on their mind right now. And certainly anytime it's a national news story, that our community has an interest that's piqued. And as relates to the issues involved in this particular news story, I think it's important that we get an opportunity to speak with members of this group and speak with any members who are watching virtually and any members of our community who still have questions. And we have received that exact question from multiple arenas. So for the sake of sort of setting foundation so that everybody is on the same page, I wanted to just read through some details. And these are picked from various news sources that are the elements of what you have seen maybe in stories you've read. But so on October 8th, the FBI announced that they interrupted a plot to kidnap Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Federal authorities released details from previously sealed charges against 13 people they say were involved in various plans to attack law enforcement, overthrow the government, and ignite civil war. The investigation began when the FBI was alerted to social media forums discussing attacks on law enforcement and the Boogaloo trend, calling for the government's violent overthrow. 6 men ultimately are facing federal charges for the alleged plot. And the reason I think that it has become a topical conversation for the city of Dublin is in the now unsealed indictment, there is a indication that according to court documents, 15 people gathered in Dublin on June 6th of this year and talked about creating a society that followed the U.S. Bill of Rights where they could live self-sufficiency. And there's a lot of other information in the indictment, but that is specifically, I think, why there has been so much attention, question, and concern from members of our public and from anybody who is familiar with the Columbus area and certainly Dublin. So I just wanted to, again, and I'm just reading from excerpts from various news stories, which certainly you probably either have read or can read there. So I just wanted to lay some foundation for the discussion. And again, I appreciate the question being asked. So the first thing I want to make very, very clear is that this is not our investigation. This was an investigation that was driven by the FBI and specifically the FBI's field office in Detroit. So right up front, I just want to make very clear, it would not be appropriate for us to give details of an investigation we are not involved in, and they're not our source to give. So any further questions, either for this group or anybody who is watching at home, we just want to make sure that we point you in the right direction, and any inquiries about specifics regarding the case should be made through the FBI's Detroit field office. So just so that we're clear on that. That being said, this was really excellent work by the FBI. Considering the circumstances, just you're reading from the news story with the potential plot of, kidnapping a sitting governor. That really excellent job from our partners at the FBI. So I just wanted to give them credit for the work they have done. What I can share, we have a great, fantastic working partnership with local members of the FBI, including members who are on the Joint Terrorism Task Force here in Columbus. So in communication with them, I did want to make sure that I reached out and with certainty could share what we are able to share with members of our community. And so there really are 4 highlights I'll go through that I think are important for members of our community to understand about the information related to that meeting in the Dublin area in June. So there is no indication that there was ever a plan involving the city of Dublin or a threat to our community. And rest assured, and I want to make this very clear, if there had been, the Dublin Police Department would have been notified and we would have been involved in that investigation. So that's the first point I just want to make very clear. We have an excellent working partnership with the FBI, with the Joint Terrorism Task Force locally. We have regular communication with those resources. If there had been a threat to Dublin, we would have been involved in this investigation. The next point I think that is really important to share with everyone is none of the individuals that were involved in the plot against the Michigan governor are from Dublin, have any ties to Dublin, and no one from Dublin or Columbus organized this meeting that occurred in the Dublin area. And no one from Dublin attended the meeting. So I think that it's important that the public know, that that our citizens know that there isn't any tie specific to Dublin. So the question then is, why did it occur then in Dublin? From the communication we've had, the meeting location was really the result of convenience. It was common traveling distance for the people attending from outside of the Columbus area, and there is no indication that there is anything more driving the reason that it occurred in the Dublin area other than that just being a common traveling distance. And then the final piece, really sort of emphasizing when we have stories that are written in the media or when we have incidents that you might see in the news, there are occasions where it might be listed as Dublin as the location or the occurrence. That's not always actually indicative that it has occurred within our city boundaries. And so there are a number of news stories you might be able to recollect that it said it was Dublin, and you find out really that it wasn't actually within the city limits where we have jurisdiction over addressing an issue or responding to an incident. And I think a really good example, and we can talk about this as well, is the shooting on 270 between the vehicles that were involved in a road rage. Initially was reported as Dublin, and frankly, we were involved in the initial response. Our officers did some fantastic work in responding, investigating, and then passing that incident along to the appropriate jurisdiction once we determined exactly where it occurred. But in this instance, it is reported that the meeting occurred in Dublin. The truth is that it happened at a hotel in Columbus that happens to have a Dublin mailing address. That being said, I just wanted to give those 4 points of clarity as it relates to information to our public and reassurance that, again, if there were any threat to the city, we would have been involved, and we certainly would have been notified and included in that investigation. No one from Dublin organized or attended the meeting. It was a common location that was picked just because people were traveling from out of the area. And then, the reality that it was in the Dublin area, but it was at an address that just has a Dublin address. That being said, I don't want to walk away as that being the total answer, because I don't think that's entirely the question and concern for our residents or for members of this advisory committee. The underlying question still is, how do we know if we are aware of all the things we need to keep our community safe? and what are we aware of things that may be occurring in Dublin, in the central Ohio area, that could potentially be threats to our community, and how engaged is our police department with the information that we need to know and in preparation for being able to mitigate, prevent, or respond to incidents that may threaten the safety of our community. So I think it's important for us to talk, and I'll just finish sort of the answer to that question, and then I'll open back up to any further that you might have about this issue or any others. So I want to assure you, the Dublin Police Department and the City of Dublin take every potential threat against our community absolutely seriously, and we investigate all threats or potential threats thoroughly. We have an excellent working relationship, as I said, and open communication with the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, state intelligence resources, and local law enforcement networks to share information. So we are aware not just of what's occurring in Dublin, but anything that has the potential to threaten the safety in Dublin. Our crime analyst, who is part of our staff, is in regular communication with the statewide terrorism analysis and crime center, which is run by the Ohio State Highway Patrol and is local here in Columbus, regularly asking and seeking information to monitor threats in the central Ohio area, and then anything that may be specific to Dublin. We have worked in the past. We don't just have a good relationship with the Joint Terrorism Task Force of the FBI. We have worked in the past, including monitoring extremist groups in the central Ohio area. And I would point out, and Lieutenant Tabernick can talk a little bit about specifics on this particular incident, but our response last year around this same time to an impromptu Proud Boys march in the area of Sawmill Road and State Route 161 really, I think, is indicative of our ability to mobilize resources in coordination and connectivity to resources like the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, Columbus Police, to ensure that our community stays safe. And so, I'll let Lieutenant Tabernick answer any specific questions we have about that response, but that was, a good example of us being able to connect to those resources. We also continually partner with those resources for ongoing training for our department. So it's not just that we are responsive to incidents, but we're always looking out on the horizon for what more can we provide our supervisors and our officers, our members in our communication center, with training that is helpful for them to understand how to be aware of concerns that might be threatening the safety of Dublin and how to respond to those concerns. So in particular, I just wanted to highlight a couple of very recent and timely trainings that we have asked resources to come in and partner with us to give us a growing awareness of what we can do to keep the community safe. In September, we had a partner with the FBI come in and provide an informational overview on federal hate crimes and hate crime reporting for our supervisors during our monthly supervisory staff meeting. So we felt like it was important that we partner again with the resource who is ultimately responsible for tracking that information on hate crimes. And we reached out to an agent who came in and provided that training overview for our supervisors, so they have all the information that they need to be able to appropriately document and report to the federal government any hate crimes that occur within our jurisdiction. And then recently, and coincidentally, on Thursday morning, in fact, we had a member of the FBI and Joint Terrorism Task Force at our supervisory staff meeting who attended our staff meeting to provide an overview training of extremist groups, including information on the Boogaloo movement that is certainly a concern for the central Ohio area and a number of other areas, in the country. So that training actually occurred Thursday morning. And again, we're very fortunate not only to have those resources available, but to have members of those organizations willing to come and share that information with us, to be partners with us, so that it isn't us reaching out the first time if we were to need to connect to a resource in the community. We've already built those relationships, and I couldn't be more appreciative of both of those agents coming our last two staff meetings to have those conversations with our supervisors. And then the last piece I'll share, and then we can open up to any other questions and certainly answer any other questions that might still be out there. But we just want to make very clear, in the City of Dublin and the Dublin Police Department, we do not tolerate extremist ideologies that threaten the safety of our community. And I just want to make that very clear for the members of the advisory committee and the members of our community, that those things are things that we are constantly paying attention to, because our job is to make sure this community stays safe for all members of our community. So while we can't answer specific questions about the investigation, because it's the FBI's investigation, we are very appreciative of the work that the FBI did in thwarting that plot against Governor Whitmer. However, we would just want to make sure that we assure the public, the members of the advisory committee, that the Dublin Police Department takes any threat against public safety seriously. We investigate them thoroughly, and we are constantly looking at ways to improve our ability to remain vigilant and to ensure public safety for all of our community members.
Thanks.
Quick question. Thank you.
Chief, I have one quick segue to that. I know all these election-related activities that are kind of in the spotlight right now, and then the big day coming up on November 3rd. There are some concerns for safety in regards to the voting community, in regards to the precincts that are part of our jurisdiction as a Dublin City. Are we well prepared to kind of provide all levels of security to all the people who will be out there voting that day? Or are there any concerns that are kind of already floating on your radar that people should be vigilant about or worried about?
That is a fantastic question, Imran. I thank you for raising it, because it is something certainly that I think everybody has a little bit of anxiety about. And so I'm going to actually ask Lieutenant Tabernick to answer that question, because he's been working on the answer for exactly that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. I just wanted to start with the backdrop that the Chief gave with our partnerships with JTTF, the STAC, the Highway Patrol, Columbus PD, Franklin County Sheriff's Office, state, local, and other federal partners. Our partnerships are very strong, and so that's where we get a lot of our intelligence. We also have open source information that we'll continue to look at. We utilize our crime analysts to make sure that we're up to date on intelligence, and then anything that's disseminated that's relevant to any criminal activity, but specifically to your question for the election. Our plan at this point, we have 17 polling locations in the city, and we, without getting into all the particulars, I am drafting a plan so that we have plenty of personnel on hand, not only at those polling locations, but in the city. So high visibility, reminder that the police are here, and we are supportive of all the steps that it takes to have a productive election go through, and then any issues public safety related, that we're there to address those. So we have plenty of staff for it, and I'm very confident that we will make sure it goes off without an issue, especially here in Dublin.
Thank you. Thanks.
I have a quick question in regards to, I won't say cyber crime, but cyber intelligence. I mean, you just mentioned crime analyst, right? So I know it's much broader at the country level, but just is there anyone or any artificial intelligence tool that tracks what's happening in the WhatsApp groups or Facebook or anywhere? I mean, just where the crime is collaborating, or you get the hints. Does it has to do anything with the Dublin police at all, within the Dublin community, what's happening, or it has to be as the FBI level?
No, that's exactly where it comes back to all the information. Again, the information sharing from federal, state, and local partners is excellent here. So that information comes from all kind of different sources, or through all kind of different sources. Our crime analyst, that could come to me, Chief, another sworn member here, and it can come from multiple different law enforcement agencies, which again, if something is going to happen here in Dublin, or we need to prepare for something, we are absolutely going to be in the loop on it.
And Sri, I mentioned really quickly our connectivity, our crime analysts reaching out regularly to the statewide terrorism analysis and crime center. And so there are resources that exist that we really do lean into to help vet the information sometimes that we're getting from community members. And so, on occasion, you'll see something on social media. And one of the things I want to encourage as part of this discussion is, if you are aware of something that is a potential threat to the safety of our community, we would ask any member of this committee and any member of our community to call us right away, to report it right away, because once we have the information, then we can start really tapping into those resources to find out what is the validity to this post that maybe you saw online, or this information you have heard from, somebody at work, or somebody from school brought home and mentioned, one of your kids, or somebody, or a teacher hears it, and so those are all examples of information that might be concerning. If you get it to us as quick as you possibly can, we can certainly start vetting then and figure out what's the right response for us to address the issue that's in front of us.
And the follow-up question on the school, when it comes to high school or middle school, do we have any programs that go to the schools, police goes to the schools and educate the kids? I mean, what to do, what not to do, and if you see similar, it could be drugs related or gun violence, it could be anything which they see as a threat. Just bringing the awareness, education, so that it's safe to inform police. Do you have any kind of training going on once a year or something like that?
I think it goes even deeper than that. I mean, our partnership with Dublin City Schools is very strong. We have 9 members of our organization that are in the community education unit. 7 of those are in the schools every day. So we try to develop those relationships from officers to students so that those SROs can be a conduit for our organization to the students. And exactly to your question, so that they're comfortable and there's a relationship there, and those students can come to those officers with any issues that they see, any information that they hear, and then the officers can address accordingly, or get that information to another part of our organization to properly resolve that issue.
But it won't go to all the members of the school, right? All the students. Do you have any boot camp or workshop for entire school? I mean, do we do once a year or something? It could be discrimination, or it could be anything. I mean, just it could be related to drugs, or just kind of any student talking something which can be weird, and just that could be a threat to the community. So those
Yes.
kind of workshops, do we conduct for the entire school, or a specific set of people?
Yes, we have various different programs in the schools, and it depends on what grade we'd be talking about, but everything from DAP, which is a drug education and awareness piece, to an active shooter type situation, so that students and teachers understand the dynamics of that situation and the police department's response to it. And then we also have personal self-defense training. So baked into all of those is a general crime prevention, public safety message that each student gets, just at different points in their learning process at the school.
Is it done annually?
It depends on the program. Yes, to answer your question, but not every student gets each program every year. So personal self-defense, for example, is more geared towards high school. Your DAP programming, drug education programming, initially is more geared towards the younger children. Now they get it throughout their schooling, but the programs are geared are localized to the different age groups. So there isn't one program that covers all students every year.
I guess the general question, though, that's a follow-up is that something that the police department could look into doing on an annual basis, whatever the curriculum might be for middle school and or high school, some different curriculum?
Yeah, we absolutely could. I guess I would just to have the conversation on here, wonder what that would look like. What our community members would be interested.
Hey, Nick, if you don't mind, could I step in and ask you another question? So sorry, Lieutenant. So real quick, I know that the department and the SROs are slammed, and you're doing a lot of really good work within the schools. So with our organization, we have a strong and longtime relationship with Dublin City Schools as well. And we have clinicians connected to every single one of the buildings on some level, whether that's a consult basis or that they're there a few days a week, kind of depends on the need and how it's identified by the district. So moving forward, my thinking is if it's something that the department wants to take a look at, we'd be happy, our team, having a discussion with you about how we could partner with you in doing that. We've done it on various levels before, really trying to help students see SROs as helpers and not scary, depending on their experience through family or living in other countries or situations. Police officers are just intimidating. And so Centero clinicians have partnered before to try to help bridge that gap between, mental health is important, substance use prevention is important, and let's talk about how we can use the SROs as another trusted adult. And so we'd be happy to talk about how we can help make that happen, how we can continue to partner on a more standardized basis. But I love the idea of just getting your folks in front of kids more often. And we could tie in when you're talking about like the self-defense pieces, which I'd love to participate in one of those classes too, to see kind of what they all learn. We'd also love to have conversations, as we do in many of our small groups and classroom education, about just healthy relationships, what those look like, what they don't look like, where kids can go if they find themselves in a situation where they feel stuck in an unhealthy relationship. I think it could be a really neat combination of that whole continuum of self-wellness and protection and education. So just wanted to throw it out there.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, in addition to bringing awareness, building the bond, bond and trust in the early ages. I mean, that's a key when the kids grow up from different communities, different colors, different race, and they have that experience, a positive experience. And I think that not only helps our community, but when they grow up and these kids go to other communities, I think that's a great point and great idea. I mean, just I don't know how much budget we may need and how much school time, but I think that will go a long way. I mean, just with the kids and future generations as well.
Yeah, and one last thing, don't want to spend too much time on it, and this may be a conversation to have with Dr. Hoadley as opposed to in this setting, but I forgot to mention last time that I worked for a program called Youth to Youth. And so, it's focused on drug and alcohol prevention, but the overarching message is youth development, youth empowerment. And so we have a saying called the dev is the prev, the development is the prevention. So developing their skills and their leadership abilities and self-esteem and things like that ultimately bolster their choice to be drug and alcohol free. And I think, to everybody's point, that connection portion is something that we focus on a lot and value. And I think it could be possibly a good addition, a good partnership to include in the future.
I agree, and thank you, Susan and Cam, both for offering that. We think we do a pretty good job at connecting to students, but honestly, we are open to anything that we can do to improve that. Because we also realize at the end of the day, we have officers that wear uniforms that some kids, for whatever reason, do not connect with. So whatever we can do to bridge that gap even more, we are all ears. So thank you both.
Lieutenant, how often do the SROs in the schools get DEI training, and how do you make sure that they apply that training when they are interacting with students of color?
So a few of our SROs, let me think real quick. 3 of our SROs, our current SROs, are also community liaison officers who function as diversity and inclusion officers and have had some specific training in that capacity. And otherwise, I know the school system has offered diversity and inclusion and equity and inclusion training to our officers that I believe they're participating in within the month here. And then we emphasize, as a police department, we emphasize those values on a continual basis to ensure that our officers are being leaders and role models in exhibiting diversity, equity, and inclusion principles.
And what is the training that, do they have a specific program, a specific name that they go to, like the name of the program?
So we have used a few different, now remember, everything now is either webinar, Zoom, that type of thing. So we have used or had them attend a few pieces by the Central Ohio Diversity Consortium. The specific titles I would have to get to you after this meeting, but they've all participated in that and been engaged in those discussions, not only for the webinar or Zoom meeting, but then bringing it back here and kind of debriefing it as a group. We've also, Cam's been a part of our initial one. We had a meeting similar to this, just on a smaller scale with our community liaison officers that was much more, we would like to listen to what our community has to tell us. And then we're waiting on getting together again for a second meeting to push some things forward.
Thank you. I would love to see the training manuals and whatever that you guys have gone through for DEI specifically.
Sure.
And then also, without compromising any students' privacy, would we be able to see like statistics of students who have maybe been disciplined by SROs and a breakdown by race, age, gender? I think that would help us make sure that, one, the policies are working, and two, if they aren't, then maybe what else can we do to improve that part?
Sure. When you say discipline, are you talking about school discipline?
Anytime an officer is involved in an incident, I would say, however you categorize that. I'm not sure how the police department would categorize it, or if it's different from a school category. ProPublica publishes data online, and we can't tell if it involves SROs or if it doesn't. So I want to see specifically data that involves SROs and how it affects each student by race, age, and gender. I think that's something this committee could take a look at.
If I can just offer in reflection, we can absolutely look at and break down how we track contact right now and bring that back. I don't know that it's going to capture every contact at the school, because there's a lot that just does not generate a call for service. And I think the underlying issue, and I thank you again for all of this conversation, because we kind of suspected at some point it was going to gravitate back towards a conversation about school resource officers, because there's been a lot, not just in our community, but in a lot of communities, about what our engagement, our intentions are, and what it looks like as a successful relationship and partnership with Dublin City Schools. And we have a long tenured relationship with Dublin City Schools. But as the Lieutenant points out, part of this ongoing discussion is, how do we improve that connectivity? How do we provide a resource in partnership with the schools, but also for the students in connectivity to understanding, again, what resource we are in the community to provide safety and to provide security for all of our community members. So a couple of things, what I heard, talking, all the way back to Sheree bringing up the programming, we are certainly open to any ideas that this committee has, or the community has, or the school system, frankly. And I don't want to step over that there are a lot of pieces that we are talking about that we do want to make sure that we have a partnership with the school system, and that we're not just introducing our own ideas into that resource that exists in partnership in the schools through our school resource officers, which is why I'm hopeful we can reconcile the calendars and get Ms. Ingram here as well. But certainly, Ms. Fialba, if you have anything to offer, I just want to make sure we tap into that as well. But one of the things I would suggest is, if this is a discussion you want to have and really get an idea of what does it look like in that interaction at the school from one of our members who is currently in the school, I would love to bring our sergeant over, our school resource officer program, into this meeting, a school resource officer who is at the high school and a school resource officer who's at a middle school, to be able to answer those questions for you directly. And then maybe that helps us wrap around, well, what is the information we want to collect that's specific to the city of Dublin, Dublin City Schools, and the Dublin Police Department, that we would be able to put in front of you to kind of track how are we, what are our metrics for success as it relates to partnership with the school, and what does that look like moving forward for developing programming to connect to the school?
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to offer one perspective. I'm at the elementary level. Courtney's perspective will be very helpful because she's at the middle school and high school. Two different worlds. That's just how school operates. But I do have like, and even if, and I know we're just starting with our work and we got a long way to go, and we're going to be able to think of more strategies. But even something as simple as, for example, I go to different schools because of the role that I play in Dublin. So I can visit any of the elementary school at any time. And I did meet one of our school resource officer, and I was just asking, I'm drawing a complete blank on the name and I apologize. But I was just asking which, if she was going in the classroom and which days she was in the school, to start getting to understand, how they operate in our buildings. And it was shared with me that they try not to show up on the same day of the week, so that not to create a pattern. So, and it was a brief encounter because I was on my way out. But even, and I was reflecting on this on my drive to the next school, and I was thinking, for partnership purposes and for connectivity, which is what our conversation has been for the last 10 minutes, it might help to reconsider and rethink that, because I do know that they have a presence in our school and they do walk around in our hallways, and there is a difference between that, but also being invited into a classroom to read a book, and so that the kids can start getting to know what's your last name, have a little Q&A, because connectivity and relationships are built over time and with frequent interactions. And if they're seeing our SROs just walking in the hallway, it's very different than being part of the community of learners in a classroom. And we do have some students that may have trauma around seeing a uniform, and we can definitely support that process. But just something to consider, a difference between just walking in the hallways versus going into a classroom for a read aloud, or even just putting that invitation out there for teachers and saying, I'll be in the building if anybody would like to invite me into the community for a little Q&A, for a little get to know. I think that will be one powerful way to build community.
That's
a great
point.
idea, Stella. That's
Yeah,
excellent.
That's excellent. And Chief, since I started, just because I know you have a big agenda here, so maybe next time onwards, maybe we can have 3-point agenda rather than 10-point agenda. But to close this, unless someone has any comments, I would say the goal is we need to see what we are doing. I mean, just maybe schedule. Let's say in terms of stats. I mean, we don't have to go into detail, but how many times? Let's say like 3 times a year we are engaging or connecting with each kid 1 time a year or something. So based on the historically what we did, and then goal is enhance student engagement and also knowledge and build trust. It takes time. So the achievement will be as a group if we are achieve something, because we cannot do all of you guys cannot do everything. So maybe we can next couple of weeks, next this meeting or next meeting, maybe we can have priorities. We need to prioritize if we all think this is a priority, and see what we are doing currently, and come back to the group and see what is your recommendation. Maybe like Stella said, once in a month or once in a quarter, just we go back and just engage with the kids in a classroom session, and just bringing some knowledge. How does the police work? It's not necessarily all the time about drugs and other things, but something. I mean, just we need to figure out what are the topics kids will be engaged. Maybe talking about basketball or something. I don't know. So I would say like continuous once a quarter or something. Go to class. I don't know how much time you have on that, but just whatever is humanly possible. Where we are, if you are doing, let's say, 20 hours a year, then just in 40 hours, what else you can do, possibly, whatever is possible. And I know there are a lot of priorities for the police department, but if you think this will change the perception, once kids talk positive about it and they go home, it could be diversified students, then obviously parents' tendency towards police will also influence positively. I'll stop here and just let the team speak. Thank you.
No, I thank you for all of the discussion. I really appreciate it. And this is the whole point of us coming together. So as I said at the beginning, just because I've listed a bunch of things on the agenda does not mean we have to get to them all. That's just, I always worry that if we get together and there isn't anything driving the conversation, how do I put something that will spark conversation? But you have shown absolutely right out of the gate in our second meeting that, you have a passion for topics. That's where we want to sit in that conversation for as long as we need to until we find clarity on what it is we're addressing collectively. So, I just want to offer that however long we need to talk about a particular issue, we will stay with until everybody feels comfortable that we have what we need to move forward. So a couple things I just wanted to offer, in reflection, and thank you, Stella, for, offering that perspective. Because I just want to highlight, Lieutenant Tabernick and Sergeant Rice and the school resource officers do a fantastic job in connecting each and every day, but we don't often get a chance to share as much as we would want to of what they do. That's why I would like to bring a school resource officer back to share. And I'll highlight, just as you said, that connectivity, Ms. Villalba, it is so important that we're not just there to protect and defend the school, but to connect with students, to be a resource, a mentor, is something that we talk about, and our officers I know are passionate about. I'll just highlight one of our officers, Officer Patrick, who's relatively new to that position, was asked to read a story for a class, and so that's something that we put out through our social media, but can we do more of that? Is the point, because I know he's interested, and just another highlight for Officer Patrick, he stayed after one evening to run with the cross country team, and it was and those are things that we didn't intentionally say, hey, we need you to plug in and do X. He just naturally, he's been with us for a very long time, and is a good fit, and loves working with the kids. So in that position, us being able to bring somebody to share, here's what I'm working on, might spark additional ideas. And that's not to say we are exactly doing everything we will do in the future. That's the point of this conversation. But I do want to bring and highlight, through people actually delivering that service each and every day in partnership with the school, what they're doing, and then talk a little bit about what their thoughts are and how they can share with this group and members of our community what we should be working towards. So thank you again for all the discussion. Before I leave it, and I want to make sure I highlight for Cam, because I heard something here during this conversation I wanted to go back to, and it's a discussion Cameron and I had very early on about trauma-informed care, and I wanted to just let you know that's something certainly that we've been talking about as well, and how do we provide training for our officers so they have an awareness of what that concept is, and how to, again, when we have those connections, even in instances where we have to respond from a policing perspective, or from as a component of a disciplinary issue that is occurring at the schools, are we as informed as we need to be about what the student might be experiencing, so we come to the right resolution for the student, for the the school, for the administrators, and for us in being a resource to be able to help keep a safe environment and a comfortable environment for all the students in the school. So I just wanted to make sure that I reflected that that's something that I heard, and I want to highlight, Cameron, for bringing that to my attention previously, and you all for bringing that up again. I have reached out previously to a contact at the Kirwan Institute for Study in Race and Ethnicity to talk about some programming that they have for training for our organization moving forward. And one of the resources that I observed as part of what they have is a trauma-informed care module that we could, and again, leading into this group and the fantastic resource we have here with our collective experience, and and Susan, certainly, if there are other ideas for training that would be advantageous for us meeting what we think where we need to grow as a community, as a school system, as a police department. Those are things I would certainly be welcome to hearing from this group for us moving forward. So I just wanted to, again, thank you all for staying in that conversation as long as we did today.
Hey, Chief, one thing, being a businessman, just I like to see the action. So let's say we discuss these kind of things, right? I mean, just it all sounds good, and it's good to hear. So question is, yes, we discuss, let's say, a couple of things on every meeting. So usually I'm telling from my side, just we measure, right? I mean, whatever we are doing, metrics, I mean, goals or KPIs. Okay, this quarter we did these many. Let's say from the first of all, we need to decide as a team, are we going to pursue this? If you decide this is a good goal and this is going to make a difference for the community, then we will say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is where the stats show as of now for the last 12 months, this is what we did. And our goal is to the positive experience to the kids and building the trust. It could be as simple as maybe 4 marathon events. I mean, not marathon, 5-kilometer ride or something. Police playing basketball with the students. I mean, high school or something, whatever you come up with. So once we increase, like at least you start with 2 times or whatever you think is reasonable and possible, then at least for you, for the group and community, whoever is listening to this, they feel like we made a difference and just we all feel good. So as a group, we got to decide, are we going to pursue, and if we are going to pursue, how we are going to measure, and how to, then we can celebrate the success once we are done with that after 1 year.
Great point, Tree. I think that's absolutely important that we highlight and put goals in front of us, and then work. I all agree this is what we're working towards, and then figure out what the metrics look like so that we can reflect. Here's the work that's been done by this fantastic group that's come together to partner with the police department. Thank you.
It's pretty obvious that we all think that the police presence within the educational setting is critical. I love hearing on everything that everybody had to say today, and I have to admit, I'm sitting here thinking I won't be able to explain or describe what school resource officers are supposed to be doing in a comprehensive way if somebody was to ask me. So I think we would all really benefit, assuming that some of you also have similar question. What exactly is it that they're supposed to be doing as opposed to what we think they should be doing? Let's make sure that we hear what their job expectations are. And I would love to see if we can compare that to, say, what we think it can be. And that should start to allow us to identify the opportunities. Then we can start to identify the metrics, which I 100% agree with. We will start to then try to achieve. But I look forward to hearing more about what the program is all about in the first place, so that maybe we can go from there.
Chief, is it possible to send kind of the group everything that you have on SROs and what their role is in Dublin? And then maybe in a couple of months after we've reviewed all of the documents, we can have a meeting dedicated just to SROs. I think this deserves its own meeting. I think we need time to go through all of the documents and anything that the chief can provide to us, and to give it the weight that it deserves. We really should come back another day and address it, just that topic. Thank you.
Chief, if you have 1 page, that's fine, because this is required, but it's not required, but it's good to have, so we can understand. And thank you for inviting for this board, but sure, I mean, you have more priority issues, but we don't want to make your life complicated, just one change at a time. I mean, that's our goal. As a team, just we don't want to make SROs as a full-time resources and just going after school. I'm sure they have other community-related issues to address. So just, I mean, we'll make sure it's not overwhelming, and just SROs should also enjoy. Otherwise, if they think it's more work, and just it will make things worse. I mean, just people who are passionate and just. I think that they should also enjoy what they are doing, and people who like working with the kids.
Chief, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll let you finish, and then I can answer.
I was going to say, like, if you have time for like one more comment, I think this is a great discussion, and thank you, Sri, for bringing this, to the conversation here. I also believe that it's very important that we work with the partnerships that we have in the school district, school board, as well as the community task force that is also working in parallel to see what are the resources that are already available, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And in this way, we can just provide ourselves our expertise and our resources to kind of synergize the existing model. That's number one. And number two, I think since we are talking about the student, and especially students in the middle school and high school level, and there are three major middle schools here in Dublin, I think it's also important to listen to the student. And I don't know if there's a existing two-way communication between the school board and the students that can provide us, what capacity, what programs, and what services they want to see the Dublin Police to be available in general optics. So I think it's very important that we would design the programs and services that meet the requirements of our constituents, rather than trying to develop a Cadillac here and they are looking for a Ferrari kind of deal. So we just want to make sure that there's a balance of that task as well. We don't want to be working on resources or investing resources into programs and services which will probably not be very relevant or impactful to our constituents. So I think that's very important aspect to put into consideration as well when we move forward in that direction. So
I just want to say thank you to this committee for all the time invested in this particular conversation. Of course, as a teacher, I might be a little bit biased in thinking this is a very important topic and I would like to talk about it for 40 minutes. But I feel the support and the partnership and the concern of everyone, on ensuring that we are serving right for our kids and that we are creating partnerships that our students see our school resource officers as human beings behind that uniform. So I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate all your thoughtfulness in this.
Thank you for pointing that out too. And we talked about this in the first meeting that, my hope was in these conversations for us to share what we do, why we do it. But as you say, the most, important piece I'd like to arrive at is who we are behind this badge. And for our school resource officers, them getting to highlight, what their investment and intentions are in going every day, wearing this uniform and serving in that role. I appreciate. So I just, trying to capture, I think it's a wise idea for us to maybe project a couple of meetings out so we can marshal all the resources and reconcile all the schedules that we might need to. I would want to, if at all possible, make sure we were able to get Ms. Ingram as part of this conversation. So I'd want to make sure that we schedule a meeting so that, no offense to anybody else who was able to make it tonight, but I think it's critical that Stella and Courtney are able to be part of that discussion. I'd love to bring back some resource officers to have them here while, certainly Corporal Howard is here with us today, and lieutenants, and I can speak from our perspective as administrators. I think it's important that you have people who are working in that function able to answer questions and provide some perspective. I think it would also be advantageous for us to lean out to our partners also in the administration at the school to be able to be part of that conversation as well. So that'll give us some time, again, to, as much as we possibly can, not knowing exactly where we're going. We may be able to meet in person in the future, but we may still be in a virtual format, which is sometimes, maybe easier, but also provide some logistical challenges as well in what we're all able to see or talk about. I think we can get you documents before that meeting for certain. We have a manual that is part of our agreement with the school that we can provide, so everybody can take a look at that. We can also, as much as the job description, certainly is something that we can give you as part of an understanding of what the focus is for that position description. We can certainly provide, and we can, absolutely get that to you ahead of time, so you have time to review that resource, so you can ask informed questions as part of that conversation, because that's the whole point anyway. So I do appreciate all of that consideration. So those are the things that I've sort of captured for the intention of that bullet point for a meeting, and frankly, that should be an entire meeting, if not more than one meeting, so that we can have the conversation as you sort of digest all of the input that you get from, that's a pretty full agenda in and of itself. We could maybe come back to it, and again, we'll sit in whatever topic we need to for as long as we need to make sure that we're fully looking at all of the questions, concerns, but also the potential that we have collectively as an advisory committee and as a police department and as a community to move forward and where we want to be in building the best resource we possibly can for students.
If is it possible to invite Dr. Hoadley, because that requires schools' involvement and their resources as well. Whenever we have that meeting discussion, it's good to have Dr. Hoadley just to listen, because sometimes we might have some goals and Dr. Hoadley might say this is not possible and this is against the school laws, whatever, our board won't agree. So just want to make sure whatever we discuss is part of that, and just that way it makes life easier for all of us.
Yes, I think that's absolutely possible. We can ask that. I use sort of administration as sort of the placeholder because I don't presume to know or be able to reconcile Dr. Hoadley's schedule, with everything. But Dr. Hoadley is part of the community task force. I will be at certainly the next meeting, as will Mr. Shoji, for that discussion. And I know that's a conversation that's occurring there as well. So certainly we can ask, and I am certain he will do everything he can to be part of that discussion.
Either way, I mean, once we decide the goals, then we can take it to Dr. Hoodley in other meeting or one-on-one. You can do it either way. It's fine. If his time doesn't permit, then we can make sure before we roll out, we have their buy-in.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chief, I have one thing I'd like to go back to before we move on to the next topic. And it just has to do with speaking the same language. And Ashmiri, the question is really to you. It was interesting as you were asking for things and you rolled off wanting to know what the officers do in terms of their DEI training. And there may be persons out there, I give the lieutenant credit for being on top of things and being able to answer that question. But there are a couple of things just in terms of the discussion that we're having. And at this point, recognizing that there are persons out in the community that may or may not be up to snuff on a number of issues. So I think that the lieutenant answered what DEI training represents. But, in the future, we need to make sure that everybody's on the same page, understanding we're talking the same language. And there was something that you put in your email that sparked the initial part of this discussion that I wish that you would take a minute or two to explain generally just what the BIPOC community represents.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge. And of course, I shouldn't use abbreviations. I should be saying the whole thing. I'm so used to abbreviating everything nowadays, especially because we're chatting or we're texting nowadays. But DEI, of course, everybody here knows it, but for the community members, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then I wrote in the email to Chief and to everybody else that I have heard concerns from our Black, Indigenous, people of color community members regarding what happened with Governor Whitmore, Whitmer, I can't even pronounce it, Whitmore, but her, and then also the incident occurring in Dublin. And Chief, you gave excellent answers. You answered there was nobody in Dublin involved, and they chose a location that was convenient to them, that wasn't anybody's home, and it was a hotel. Those were specific concerns that I've heard, was there Dublin community members involved? Is this something that's happening in our community that we need to be aware of? And as a woman of color, this is something that maybe, people who are not people of color wouldn't hear about, because we're not as comfortable talking about these concerns as we are with our own community members. And so, when you answered those, that was the main concern, is this happening, especially with the Proud Boys rally that happened last year. People thought it was connected. I've heard concerns that they're connected, and is this happening, and what's going to happen to our minority places of worship, and what about our schools, and especially in this side of the river where I live, in the Scioto High School district, and we have a large minority community in that district, and people were concerned. And so when you answered, and you were very thorough and you answered those questions, and I thought it was very nice of you to give us all that time and all that detail. I do hope that maybe you could make a statement too, because a lot of people may not be listening or watching this. And if you can make a statement or if the city of Dublin wants to put it out on their Facebook page, that might help too, that there's nobody who was in the city, no member of the community was involved, and that it was a random location. It wasn't anybody's house. I think those two were the main concerns that I heard. So that's all.
No, and again, I appreciate, I mean, that is the whole intention of this advisory committee is, not just for us. Again, we're going to bring resources back, as we've talked about for the last, several minutes to talk about the school resource officer program. And so we are a resource that we are bringing to the table, but it really is, as you have questions individually or you hear from community members, you hopefully are conduit to hearing things that we otherwise maybe wouldn't, or people who don't have a comfort level in reaching out to us and asking those questions. I appreciate you raising the concern. And I want to be very clear too, the reason we waited was because we do need to coordinate with those who they have that investigation. And so there were things and we have great connectivity, which is why we were able to work through it so quickly over the last few days to be able to provide what we could, but because we never want to step out in front or jeopardize an investigation or jeopardize anyone's safety in an ongoing investigation. So we just wanted to make sure we were thoughtful in how we provided the information, but also answered the questions that are resonating right now in our community, and answer the underlying issue too, which is not just about the specifics of that case, but what are the concerns that that we have as a police department in being able to identify, prevent, respond to anything that threatens the safety of any of our community members. And so that's why we wanted to just be very thoughtful and thorough in our response. To your question, that's something about putting out a statement. That's something we'll talk about with our communications and public information department on the right way to provide that information, again, while also balancing. This is not a story that that is involving Dublin, but how do we give that information to the right community groups? And that's a conversation that I've had with our communications director, who is thinking that through now about how we deliver that information now to this group. And I would hope that you share it with anybody who has had that question, or who you feel like will have that sense of safety and security because they now know that answer. But if that's us delivering that to some of those partners that we've had in the community, the HOAs, the Convention Visitors Bureau, that's something we can, deliver it strategically without it necessarily needing to be a press release or a news story when, frankly, we don't want to force our way into an arena where it may not resonate with our community members in a way we can deliver correctly. So thank you for bringing that up as well, because we do want to be mindful that it's not just putting the information out there, but making sure people have it and have a comfort level afterwards.
Chief Pice, I have a question regarding communication. As I'm hearing you talk about how you want our community to reach out, to the Dublin Police Department if they are concerned. Especially, what recently happened is a very good example of something that will cause a lot of fear in the community. And I apologize if this is already public knowledge and I do not know about this, but we have a large population that are citizens from the global majority that are living in Dublin that speak multiple languages. What is the access to different languages if they call Dublin Police Department? Is there such a thing as numbers that they can dial for specific language? Is it with an interpreter? How do they access if they need to communicate?
That's a great question. I'm looking for him to see if he's still on the call. Director Somerville actually had to split time between our meeting and the Hilliard, I think, City Council meeting tonight, so he may have jumped off. We do have access to resources in our communication center who can help us interpret, but I don't want to misspeak on that. If you will permit me, what I will do is get that answer from Director Somerville, and we will send that out to all the members. after this meeting as a written response to that question. So what resources do we have available for somebody who is calling and requesting assistance who may have not or who may need translation as a resource to be able to communicate thoroughly exactly what they're experiencing. So let me reach out to him and provide that answer and written response after the meeting, if that's okay.
I have a feeling that question is going to be a part of a bigger challenge or issue. I know the website review is on the agenda, right? So not just the interpretation assistance when somebody calls in, but how the Dublin Police Department puts itself out to the public under normal circumstance. I mean, how open do we seem on the website to the non-native English speakers? I think that's an important question to ask. And I believe this will also be a part of conversation on the city manager's task force side, as the city of Dublin considers the same question. How does the city of Dublin want to be seen by the public out there? So that's going to be a very overarching question / a challenge for us to conquer.
And thank you for clarifying. I didn't mean to answer so narrowly in that respect. Frankly, I was looking for Director Somerville on my board here to see if he could answer, and then realized he wasn't part of the conversation. But you're absolutely right, and it's certainly something that, as we talk about the website, but much more than the website, as you say, when we put out a press release, when we put out a pamphlet, when we have anything, and I think about so we didn't have an Irish festival this year, but the lieutenant and I were just talking about it recently. We had an app the first time for the Dublin Irish Festival last year. Is that accessible to people who don't have English as a first language, or who have a comfort level with a different language? That is a resource. If we want it as a resource for an international event, does it have all of the components that are necessary to help people navigate an event or the information in the city, our community? Thank you for broadening that perspective again. I apologize for narrowly focusing it, but you're absolutely right. I think it's a larger perspective, and certainly something that, again, as this conversation progresses and at the community task force, I think is important to continue to have. So far we have navigated first point of the agenda, which is fantastic. The touchstone of a good conversation is you just get lost in the conversation. And so I am so appreciative, because last time it was so much introduction that I know I wore everybody out just talking myself. So thank you for again, bringing forward the very important question that we were able to answer today, but all of the other discussion that we've had so far. If we don't have any additional questions or commentary sort of as new topic of discussion, I just want to move forward to the website and let Ms. Myers talk about sort of some of the feedback you might have, or for us to take a look at the website. And it's a good follow-up to the question we just had, or conversation we just had about communicating to the public. Thank you, Rebecca.
Sure. I can share my screen with everybody so that they can see what we're talking about. And then I would like to leave it up to anybody to start chatting about the separate sections. And if there's a dog barking, I apologize, that's mine. But if anyone has any questions, can you all see the police cruiser and the 8 icons?
We can see it. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, if there's any, just off the bat, some reactions, and what else we can do to just draw people in. I will note that for the pictures, including the cruiser right now, we are working to get some new photos of our officers and just showcasing everybody in the membership. So we will kind of update some of those pictures.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Before I really get to any necessarily questions, or I think it's important to note the way we've been emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. I apologize over the past couple minutes, and I really, before I could get into any of the words or the layout of the website, I was pretty immediately struck by the images, and more specifically, representation in the images. So, I want to be cognizant of not just speaking for myself and hopefully being representative of the entire group. So I kind of want to gauge where everybody else is at with all of this. But when you looked at the photos, right, how many of you were concerned about the diversity of the folks that made up those photos? By a show of hands. I know I can't see all of your faces, but I'll try and scroll through as quickly as possible and see if you have hands raised. Okay, cool. And then second, how many, if it concerned you, and even if it didn't, and this is for everybody really, how many of you saw someone that looked like you on in any of those photos? Raise your hand. Somebody that looked like you, represented you in whatever identifier or identifiers you choose. Okay, so there's a stark contrast that I'm seeing between the folks that are on this committee and presumably in the community and what's being perceived on the website. And so that was really my first, before I could get into any words or semantics surrounding the website, I was really just struck by the images. And I, as I mentioned, I work for Youth to Youth, and we talk a lot about representation and how representation is so extremely important as we talk about folks that might want to become a police officer in Dublin, or folks that are looking to move to Dublin or have students in Dublin. And if they look to the website, and this is something I've mentioned before, and they don't see someone that looks like them or represents them, they may begin to wonder if that space is meant for them. So again, before I could really jump into any words or the layout of the website, I really wanted to touch on the images and sort of what they meant to me.
Thank you, Cameron. That was a big initiative that I'm sorry wasn't done before we had this conversation, was to make sure that our officers of color and our women officers are very highlighted, and that they can, be seen. But no, thank you so much for that input.
I think I would, and yeah, thank you definitely, Cameron. I think that is something that I noted as well, following up, but I think it definitely sounds like that's in process, and Rebecca's on it, and those things are in the works. I think it could be neat too. I know there's only so much space in the website, but to have some of those pictures of things, if we can capture them, of officers interacting with kind of community events as well. And I think there are some on there. So just again, to have that representation and to let folks see them as humans as well, I think is a really good reminder. They're not just the uniform, they are people as well in our community a lot of the time. And then I think one of my questions, and I believe the chief might have answered this in one of my emails, was, Rebecca, can you speak to, I might not just be seeing it, in regards to language, is there a function that folks can choose and change the language for the website if they need it translated?
I'm sure, like I'm into technology, so technology has enhanced so much. I was just surfing on the internet while we were talking. There is a app or website called, maybe Rebecca can look into that. It's called Weebly, Weebly. I don't know how to pronounce Weebly or Weebly or Weebly. So it does have a platform where you can build any website, and maybe once you can click any language, because traditionally either English or Spanish. I mean, because you cannot support people. I'm sure, like in Dublin, there are people who are from different 50 countries at least. We need 50 languages. So obviously, I'm sure this one or there should be some app where we can use as a platform, and just I think it will be not that expensive. I believe maybe $10 a month or something. But I just started looking into that. Maybe whoever is developing the website, it's Rebecca or someone can look into that. I mean, there will be some options. It won't be expensive and complicated.
Thank you, Sherry and Susan. Yes, I know that that's part of our the communications and public information. That'll be part of the task force conversation and that general translation availability and making things accessible. But some of those add-ons can be, like Sherry said, could be simple, quick, less expensive in the meantime while we try to ramp up things overall. So that's wonderful. Thank you. And also, actually, part of our some of our videos that we want to put out just kind of to talk about the police, about who we are, would be to focus on that humanity, like you said, Susan, and really just show people interacting, or like, hey, you know, on my time off, I like to go work out, or just kind of show police officers as members of the community and not just in their uniforms. So that's something we've been brainstorming, but that's great to hear that that's what you would like to see. And then if that hopefully resonates with other people too.
Rebecca, this is Imran. Sorry, I want to compound on Susan's comment, and I think you know, it might be very difficult to show the multiculturalism and the diversity in the police task force at the moment right now. So I think what we can probably capitalize on is the opportunity of representing different events and activities and police officers interacting in those activities with the diverse, you know, multicultural ethnicities that are part of you know, the Dublin community in general. So I think that is something, if somehow can be incorporated on the website, whether in the form of a video clip or like, you know, a collage of pictures, you know, as kind of like an event flow, that might be something very meaningful and very relevant to the optics of the public in general. So just a thought that, you know, maybe the IT department, you know, that's developing the website can take into consideration as well.
Thank you. And I know we've been, you know, hard pressed for events, as, you know, everything is with social distancing, but there has been events outside and such that we, you know, we have officers in masks meeting with people. But yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind. Maybe event focus is just an easy way, image wise, to showcase that connection and what, you know, further connections we can still make with the community.
Sense. Thank you. And one more kind of segue to that is I think it might also be very meaningful that if you can maybe have a routine address from Chief Pius, like published like on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, like not like a newsletter, but more kind of like a personal, you know, health check of the community and the police department, kind of like a very brief announcement, again, on a monthly basis, on our quarterly basis, especially to cover like, you know, any major events and activities and some of the focuses and the trainings and services that the police department might be working with, you know, again, the advisory committee, as well as with the task force and the city council and the city manager's office in general. Some kind of like, you know, a personal touch on the website. I think that will be also very helpful to kind of take into consideration. So,
Imran, to your point, I think there is a in the website, the one which I'm on the screen, community engagement. Maybe initially we need some content as well. So maybe part of it, I mean, just maybe one newsletter once, whatever it's monthly or quarterly at least to get started, and where we can see some of the diversity along with regular news. I think that will be
exactly. Yep.
Good start. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question is, who is going to write? I mean, just that needs to be like we said, we can discuss 100 things, but end of the day, we need to prioritize, and maybe going forward, maybe after the next meeting, we need to pick one issue at a time and come back with all the action items, execution plan, because we cannot solve more than one issue a month. I mean, it's very tough for chief, and just maybe once we have 3-4 issues, then we need to put more on follow-up, because there is not much we can do in the pandemic. I mean, at least
I agree. I agree.
And chief, one quick question. I mean, just earlier we mentioned like we need to have diversity pictures. I'm not sure what percentage of our police department. Do you have any people of color, any officers or any people in the team?
Yeah, I'm going to answer. We are not as diverse as you know, as our community is what I'll answer. And so, you know, we, you know, frankly, and I want to go back to Cameron and ask sort of expectation on what he thought he might see, you know, or what we would like to see. Is that reflective? Is that question on diversity reflection answered by some of the suggestions that I've heard tonight, which are showing our community members engage with our police department? and balancing, if we only have, we have 3 officers who are Hispanic, is it the same 3 photos over and over and over again, or photos of, one officer? We have, 2 Black African American officers who are, both male. We have, I'm trying to remember, I think we have 7 female officers. Are they the same photos that we would use over and over again, knowing that we want to represent what we actually are, while we continue to strive towards improving our reflection of our community makeup and the community that we serve. So it's not just Dublin, but frankly, we have a lot of people who travel to our city and work and travel through our city that are from the Central Ohio area, and so there's a diversity that exists in all of Central Ohio that is greater than even the diversity that we have in the community here in Dublin. So, so I just wanted to, and we can certainly provide the breakdown of what our membership looks like as part of this ongoing discussion. I can bring that information back to you as a follow-up meeting.
That I didn't mean to go in deep. Just I was thinking about the pictures, how many pictures we can get. It doesn't need to be 10 pictures. Maybe on the home page, maybe 1 picture, because people are not going to go deep. If possible, just 1 picture with some diversity. I think that will do. You don't have to put an entire website showing that we are different or something. Just I think 1 picture on the homepage somewhere, that will do. And I know you attended a lot of community events as well, like because I know I've seen a couple of places. I invited a couple of places as well. So I think those pictures, I think as a part of the newsletter, community engagement, I think that should do. We don't want to show what we are. I mean, just kind of we need to be very transparent and making sure at the same time.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a double-edged sword. You sort of have to, be honest about where you're at regarding diversity. But, in the same breath, you mentioned having African-American police officers, yet they aren't, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, they aren't anywhere seen. I see no pictures on that. So, it could be 1 picture. 1 picture is better than none in my book. And that is, transparent in my view. So I get it. It's definitely a tough line to walk between, like, am I doing this just for the sake of faking it, or are we actually being representative? But I think in this case specifically, regarding just representation and what we're portraying, I think 1 photo of a Black officer is better than none.
No, Cameron, I appreciate, and again, this is me leaning into the question and asking in all earnestness, and thank you for the frank answer on it too, because and one of the things I'll reflect, for the group is, for me, the other consideration is I never want to force somebody to be the face of our organization unless they're comfortable with it. And, and in all frankness, and part of the conversation that we're having collectively together as a Chiefs Advisory Committee is, right now, there are officers who are not as comfortable with having their picture shared. And I understand that. Frankly, I love the support that we have from our community, but right now it's a tough time, for an officer who is working on the street to consider all the things that maybe they are hearing about the American public's perception of policing. But hearing this conversation and hearing the importance of reflecting the diversity that we have gives me the opportunity to go back and have that conversation with those officers about how important it is for us to be able to, again, share with somebody from our community that we have officers who look like them, because that may be the difference between them feeling comfortable and connecting and maybe not reaching out, or maybe not having that conversation when they see that officer out in public or in a school, or on in a response to a call where they need assistance. And so, I'm just offering out loud sort of some of the perspective, because I think it's great to have the conversation. I love the feedback and input, because it gives me the opportunity to go have that intentional conversation, and both lieutenants as well, with our officers about their value and importance, not just to our organization, but to our community and beyond our community, in our industry, and reflecting that there is diversity that exists in policing. There is diversity that exists in law enforcement, and that may be a bridge for some people who maybe weren't as comfortable with law enforcement, but will be because they get a chance to reach out and connect with somebody. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Chief, I appreciate you sharing the perspective of other officers that may not be comfortable being the face. I did wonder a little bit about that, and it's good to know that that is something that we need to be sensitive about. And, you know, I don't think this is the message that we're trying to deliver today, which is that somehow the current members of the police force are not good enough, right? It's not that. If there's no Asian officer within the Dublin Police Department, okay, so it's better to have one, right? Let's accept that it's better. But if it's not, it does not make you not good enough. No, you still should be proud of who you are, and you just need to aim to always be better. And I think there are always other ways to show that you're committed to diversity. And you know, that could be, as Imran said, you know, feature some events, or I think Sri mentioned that as well. Or maybe the main picture that you bring on the front page, or when you see the Dublin Police Department is one of the officers and a group of very diverse community members.
Exactly.
I don't think any of us is unaware of what happens with those post photos, right? I mean, when I was an undergrad or grad school, I know there was a reason why I was chosen to be on the dean's Christmas card. I know there's a reason why I was on the front of the grad school brochure. Okay, it's not because I'm the best looking kid that was in class. There was a reason for that. But I think this is the...
You look good, don't undermine yourself.
This is the environment that we live in, and we do have to play that game to some extent if you want to show that you're serious about this. And I think it's that posture that the community overall would appreciate. We're not asking you to, get a picture of an Asian police officer from California and put a Dublin emblem on it and put it in a picture. But the desire to be open, the desire to incorporate everybody and to appreciate everyone in the community.
I just wanted to add, I think, the perspective that Chief Pice brings, from the inside of the department about some officers not feeling comfortable. We totally understand that. We have the same thing in our schools when it comes to privacy of photos and all of that. So I think the guiding question could be, how do we balance, because representation does matter. And like Cam said, we cannot dream of who we can become if we don't see ourselves in the pages of a book, in the different professions. And it's very important that now more than ever, our citizens from the global majority see that they can be somebody in this country. So maybe it is a guiding question of, like, when there are community events, the lighting of Christmas tree, I don't know, I'm just thinking of a couple of possibilities. I don't know what that's going to look like with the new COVID regulations, but it's the intentionality of who we are sending out so that the community can see. So they may not see it on a website, but they see it in real life, in real person, who is out there representing Dublin Police Department. So food for thought.
I think intentionality is the key word that I continue to hear. And even in the quote unquote stage type pictures, it wouldn't be so terrible to see a white officer, based on the conversations we've had tonight, surrounded by a multi grouping of students at some school event. And that doesn't have to be quote unquote something that's going on right now in the community. That can be staged and intentional, but it allows for a scenario where police interacting with kids of color is a positive thing as opposed to a negative thing.
No, and I agree, and thank you, Stella. Thank you, Judge. I mean, I really appreciate it because it does help us sort of wrap around our mind around what should we be capturing that's already occurring. You know, as you said, it could be staged. I don't think we have to work very hard to get a photo that isn't staged. You know, our officers are immersed in, you know, in particular in the schools. We all know how diverse our school system is, and we talk about it, but are we able to reflect it as part, again, as we have this discussion about our website, and it projects not just to our community, but it projects to anybody who finds their way to our website who is looking to learn a little bit about Dublin, the city of Dublin, and the Dublin Police Department. So, I really appreciate you guys, again, sitting into the conversation and helping us understand how do we reflect the diversity of the community as we continue to, again, always strive to improve effectiveness from our perspective in employment, but also, you know, as Mr. Soji says, we don't have anything that is wrong about who we are. It's just how do we reflect who we are as a community, because this committee is a perfect example. Our service to the community is our members and our community members coming together to ensure the safety of the city of Dublin and our community. So I thank you for the conversation, because I think that's something we can certainly, as we continue to have discussion about how we collect photos for the website and then continue to reflect our community, I think it's important consideration. So thank you.
Chief, I'll make one comment because we have a long agenda and 15 minutes left. So based on what I captured is there just for the future next meeting. One is enhanced student engagement. We talked about that. That's a big topic, and just we need the entire meeting to put together an execution plan. Of course, goals and execution plan. Definitely, as we are discussing, website is the one, and not only website, how we communicate through website. It could be multilingual, or it could be website and, let's say, communication. It's a newsletter, what we want to include in the newsletter, or it could. And the third thing is, most importantly, is community engagement. We talked about it could be how to community engagement and what do you call diversity and integration. So how we briefly discussed about maybe police officers of color just in the pictures, or going to the communities. Maybe as these are the three different discussions, if we all agree. So then we can go deeper. Meanwhile, you have some time and you can talk to those police officers and see if they want to be part of it. If not, then we'll have 3 or 4 ideas, and just we can reach out to the community. And I'm not giving any solutions right now. I'm just capturing the 3 important points where we can have next meetings, which are more meaningful, and just open up and put together, narrow it down to 2 or 3 goals, and how we can execute and who is responsible for that. I mean, going forward, those kind of meetings, because if we keep on discussing, there will be 100 items and we can never fix it. So these are the 3 I captured, but I leave it there, and just I leave it to the group, whatever we all decide.
I really appreciate how you're summarizing things, because that's how my brain works too. I will, at the risk of somebody trying to throw something, I do want to throw one other piece back to what was discussed earlier that we didn't touch on a lot was, and not necessarily today, obviously, but moving forward, I would love to be able for this group to also be supportive, not only in how we can support the department in connecting with the community, but how we support the department. And so with that, one of the pieces that the chief brought up that it sounds like he has had conversations with Cam about is that trauma-informed care piece. And so we talked a lot about the school, and yes, I will also admit, Stella, little biased here because I do a lot of my work in the schools. However, when we think about trauma-informed care trainings and approaches, that's going to benefit the department, both sworn officers and civilian folks across the board, with the whole community, with whomever they're interfacing with. And so I'm not going to remember the date. I know within the last couple of years, we have engaged the department in some of those trainings. We're actually within a month and a half, we've got another one scheduled with some of the civilian folks with the department. And so really thinking about how we as a committee want to think about how do we support officers and civilians within the department, because as we've all agreed, they're also humans. And so they are interfacing with a lot of traumatic stuff whether it's folks calling in with emergencies, or coming up on scenes or anything like that. And so really trying to help them navigate that secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. And I know I'm throwing out words here, but helping them manage how to stay healthy and well as people so that they can continue to engage fully with the community. And so I do want us to be mindful of that as a group as well, because I think it'll just make them stronger, which will make our community stronger. And that's just, I think, a key piece that we can plug into.
That's a great point. And just Susan, like we Dublin Police and Firefighters Scholarship Fund, which I started with the students. Maybe you are aware of that. Maybe once we decide what are the programs, key programs, and how much it costs, then I can help you to introduce the communities. And just because once we start doing all these things, what we discuss, top first 3 points, it makes much easier for people once we have the trust. And just I tell my son, fundraising, there are billions of dollars people are ready to give, but how to make the emotional connection, that's the most important. Once you have that, people don't care about money. So anyway, all these kids, I train them, just go there. There is a bunch of money lying and people are willing to give, but how to connect them, that's the key. If you can't connect, then obviously people are resistant to give you a dollar. So anyway, definitely, yeah, I think that's a great topic. And just I'm sure, like, if we have 3 things from the police, and obviously we have to do at least give back one item, which is what you mentioned last. So definitely we need to, I can help you with that. And we all as a community, we can help. I think I don't see a problem with that, giving back to the police.
Hey, we've got about 10 minutes left. And I know that we didn't get to Rebecca's discussion about the website very much. That's obviously something that we probably should come back to and spend some time on the next time we have a meeting. And we certainly have to get to this chair and vice chair discussion, and we're going to have to make a decision by the next meeting on who the chair and the vice chair is going to be, because that's in the resolution. The time frame is set. So
can we discuss and get decided in next 10 minutes, Judge?
Spoken like a potential chair, Judge. So yes, no, I appreciate, and again, we've had a lot of really great conversation today. So this is not an indictment of anything that we have discussed or spent time in, because it's all important. And certainly the first meetings, and if you guys are all exactly like me, you want to solve everything as soon as we possibly can. So I appreciate it, and I guarantee we're going to have a lot more discussions where we're going to get into everything we've discussed. Real quick, I want to go back and thank Susan for bringing that up, and again for the training that you provided us in the past, and certainly. One of the things I would love to have time to talk about in the future, if we get an opportunity, is the wellness programming that we're working on developing for our members. That we just had, as part of the last staff meeting we had last week, we had a very, very open discussion with our supervisors about what that looks like in an ideal state for us developing resiliency and support for our members, because this is a tough job to be in, and we certainly want our officers and our dispatchers and our civilian staff prepared to take care of each other. So that we can take care of the community. And so thank you for highlighting that as well. And Shri, certainly for the support we had in the community, in the past, now, and going forward, we couldn't be more appreciative for highlighting that. I do want to move into, if everybody's okay with it, just a quick discussion about chair and vice chair, and let you as members of the committee really talk about what your thoughts are, because we do, as Judge points out, have a obligation in the next meeting to identify a chair and vice chair, which will help sort of, for me, frankly, have somebody to work with to help manage the agenda and the discussions moving forward. Not that I haven't loved, again, every bit of the conversation.
Is it too late? I mean, we can decide. I mean, we can start with who want to volunteer. Maybe then that makes much easier going into next meeting if you don't have to pick today. Well, first of all, who is interested to be the chair? That way, at least we can. If there is only one person, then we can decide today. But if there are multiple people, then we can, as a team, we can decide.
Yeah, I nominate Stella.
I wasn't trying to press. I just wanted to make sure we had the discussion.
I nominate Stella for chair or vice chair, whichever one she wants.
I was going to say, since we have 2 members missing today, would it be meaningful to at least have their inputs as well?
I'm sure there will be at least a couple of people missing all the time. So just I think you have to go. Yeah. Don't you agree? I mean, just because I'm sure one meeting or other meeting, there are 1 or 2 people missing all the time. So
Even if 1 or 2 people are
let's get
missing,
the volunteer list. I can't because the reason I'm asking is I can't be both because I can't be anything because I travel a lot. Because of pandemic, I'm stuck here. Otherwise, I don't know which country I will be at this point of time. But so I cannot take the that role as just because it's very important role and the key decisions will be made. So I will be a regular participant and member of the group. So, any others?
to Imran's point, the resolution says that the person has to be elected by the appointed group. It's 10 of us, so
okay,
everybody should have the opportunity to vote, even if they can't be present at the particular meeting. Even if they can't be present at the next meeting.
So maybe
Can we do it by email?
Do we? I think there are some tools. Just like I don't remember on top of it, top of my head. There is a. It's called Doodle or something. I'm sure there is a tool which we use to schedule the meetings based on the availability. Maybe I'm sure if you put the names and like 10 number of people in the group and let everyone vote or something. Maybe I don't know. I mean, just there should be. It's going to be very difficult, even though everyone is present. It's going to be very tough to if everyone has to vote. Maybe it has to be some tool where we can vote online, and just that way it will be much easier.
Judge or Chief, I might have missed it. Did one of you say, do we have to be in person when it's decided, or could it be like a Google form, like survey?
Everyone has to vote. Based on my understanding, everyone needs to vote. Everyone has to vote.
It doesn't have to be in person.
No, and I was just, I'm sorry, I was just pulling up the resolution so I could read through, because I think it's probably important that anybody who is interested in assuming those responsibilities, has all the information they would need. And then for all of you making the decision, certainly the information. So I'll read the section on chair and vice chair from the resolution for the Chiefs Advisory Committee. The Chiefs Advisory Committee will elect from its appointed membership and no later than its 3rd meeting, a chair whose duties it will be to coordinate meeting agendas and advisory committee support for with the assistance of the chief of police, preside over meetings and serve as the spokesperson for the Chiefs Advisory Committee. And then in the vice chair role, whose duties it will be to serve in the absence of the chair. And then the only other piece I just wanted to highlight is the reporting requirement. And the Chiefs Advisory Committee will at minimum submit to the city manager and city council a semi-annual update as to its findings, progress, recommendations, and associated actions of the advisory committee, unless more frequent updates are necessary as determined by the city manager, city council, chair of the Chiefs Advisory Committee, or the chief of police. So those are really the highlights from. It does not say in the resolution how it has to be voted or that it has to be at the meeting. As far as I can see in the resolution, those are the sections that cover it. So I think we have flexibility to include everybody's input and interest in assuming those roles and navigate that. I think it probably is advantageous that we don't take any sort of action until the next meeting so that we get a chance to communicate the notes at the very least from the meeting today to the 2 members, Ms. Ingram and Ms. Yin, who are not with us today, so that everybody at least has an opportunity to review what I just read as part of the record, and then the conversation we had about the chair and vice chair.
That sounds good. Chief, in addition to the chair and vice chair discussion next meeting, would you like to pick up any of the topics, one topic we discussed today, so that we can go deep, or do you think that will take entire 2 hours of time to pick the chair and vice chair?
It's hard to predict exactly, without knowing the interest for the group, who wants to be and how much discussion that will require. That could be a very quick selection, but again, I don't want to control that process, so I'd want to leave space for that on the next agenda. As far as the other items, I keep putting things on the agenda that I'm holding, because if it is required to generate conversation, then I just wanted to have something to reach and grab and start the conversation. Frankly, today, this is what I would expect the conversation will look like for the group moving forward. Frankly, for the chair and vice chair, I think the trick is, how do you capture that meeting agenda with my support and help, and certainly the resources that I have here at the department to help navigate. But how do you have that communication with the other members of the advisory committee to help determine what's going to be on the agenda? And then I will bring whatever resources, including myself, to answer questions or to provide the information you feel is necessary to have informed discussion about the topics that are in front of us, and to again solicit the input from community members and bring it to this discussion as we get together in the future.
I would say,
so I didn't answer the question. We don't have to continue any of those agenda items into the next meeting unless the committee feels like they are pertinent for the discussion.
Then I'm good, because chair and vice chair discussion, we can complete all these items then before going into the action items maybe following week.
We'll keep that on the agenda up front next meeting.
I think too that if you want to be the chair or the vice chair, that maybe for the next meeting you can talk about what your goals might be, what you would hope that the group would be able to accomplish in the course of the 9 months that we have left will have left in our terms by the next time that we meet. And so in addition to your interests, what your goals or expectations or focus might be for the group moving forward, that might be helpful as well.
I think that's good. So Judge, if I understand right, whoever is interested, you are recommending to send to the group what they're going to achieve, basically one summary of 2-3 paragraphs or whatever it is, based on that makes all of us to make a selection. Is that what you are am I understood right?
I was much more in the visionary mode than in the specific metrics that you like to work within, but I think that's a reasonable thing to do, particularly if someone has a real interest in being the chair and or vice chair. It's nothing to say that we can't talk with one another. Communicate with one another.
I like your idea.
Next day.
Yeah, otherwise it gets so complicated. 10 people, we don't know who is interested, who is not. I think whoever is interested in that position, maybe they can just write a summary why I am the right person. Then that makes life easier. Maybe 2 or 3 people will show up. End up, if not everyone is interested, then that makes much easier decision for all of us. Or even before we come to the meeting, we can make a decision.
The last thing I'll offer.
Great.
The last thing I'll. Oh, sorry, Judge.
I just think I agree, and I think it's a great suggestion.
The last thing I would offer, just because there's always a little bit of, from experience, I'm interested, but maybe I'm not as interested as somebody else. Here's what I would offer, just from my perspective. We would be glad to have any of you as the chair or vice chair, and certainly I'm just very appreciative that all of you are as invested and interested in the conversations about our community and about our police department as you are. So anybody who has interest, certainly, we'd be very happy for anybody to be a partner in that role with us as we all continue to be collectively together as this advisory committee.
Thought, guys, is
you're on mute.
The middle of the month the best time for us to meet for your schedules? Because it would either be the week of the 9th through whatever 14th, or the 16th through the whatever date that is, 20th, 21st, something like that. One of those 2 weeks in the middle of November, is that better? Would that work for everybody? if you don't know, just maybe check your calendars, and Chief, if you would have Rebecca or whomever reach out sooner than later with those time frames, maybe we can get the date, and in the interim, if somebody's interested, they can communicate their interest and their vision prior to the next meeting.
I would just make 2 notes. The 11th is Veterans Day, and then the 17th, the Community Task Force is meeting. And I'm not sure if the school board is any time for those Tuesdays. And also City Council, I think will meet on the 9th, just as an FYI.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. And if there are other, because I know it was a point of conversation early in the meeting today, if there are other items or meetings that members bring to our attention too, certainly feel free to do that as well. But thank you, Rebecca, for reconciling sort of the city calendar as we consider when the next meeting will be held.
So what date you're suggesting, 11th?
No, the 11th was Veterans Day, where the city has the day off, as the schools might as well.
Yeah, pretty much I'm good on any day, so I'll let you all pick as of now.
I tell you what, why don't we pick a few days around what Rebecca just highlighted as maybe things that won't work, and we'll figure out when the school board meeting is in that area, and we will send those out here by the end of the week to make sure we can get the next meeting scheduled, and then that gives a target point for anybody who has interest to share with the group what their interest is in these 2 positions, and then we can sort of digest that, or you can digest that and come back to the conversation as an agenda item for next with the intention for the next meeting with the intention of identifying the chair and vice chair by the end of that meeting. So we're just over 7:30, and again, I kept I muted myself last time, which you know, Rebecca Metcalf wishes she had the ability to do most times when I'm in a meeting. I just wanted to make sure we honored as close as we can the time window today, and just if there are any other questions, comments, or feedback for today's meeting, I can't thank you enough for all of the discussion we had today. We will capture all of the meeting notes and send those back out here in the next few days as well. We do not need to get to the rest of the items on the agenda today, but I just wanted to again thank you and leave any space for anything else anybody has for the good of the order.
I just wanted to just thank Stella for using the term global majority. It's a very empowering term, and I think we should all try to use it in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great discussions. I really enjoyed our discussions. Hopefully, I was not too aggressive.
The last piece I'm going to offer, unless anybody else has any other comment before we close tonight, Lieutenant Latanzi has been waiting the entire time to share some information on some training. We had our in-service training between the last time we met and this meeting. He has a memo he's prepared. What I'm going to ask him to do then is just send that out as information to the group as an overview. He just gave me the overview of our in-service training. I think there are some highlights that certainly we would want to communicate to the public and certainly to this group on things we're working on in changes in policy, and then our practical application in our training we did as practical exercise in moving towards not just theoretical policy and two-dimensional policy, but actual application of those changes in policy as it relates to us providing service. So he's put together a very good memo overview. We're going to send that out as well, and we can talk about that when we come back together next time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight, and I appreciate it. Anything you have between now and the next meeting, certainly feel free to communicate directly to us, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time in November. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.